There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from being the one who holds everything together. Not just the schedules, the plans, the emotional temperature of the home, but the invisible weight of anticipating, managing, preventing, smoothing, adjusting. It's the tiredness of always being a step ahead in your mind. Of asking yourself, if I don't think about it, who will? Of feeling responsible not just for what happens but for how it feels when it happens. And underneath that tiredness, there may be a quieter feeling. A soft, unspoken fear. If I loosen my grip, will everything fall apart? If I stop managing, will I disappear? If I stop controlling the details, will I lose myself? Or lose the relationship? This is not the voice of someone who wants power. It is the voice of someone who wants safety, stability, peace. You didn't become controlling because you were rigid. You became controlling because at some point, being hyper-aware felt like the way to survive emotionally. Because caring deeply often teaches us to brace, to hold, to monitor, to prepare for impact. Welcome to the conscious marriage, the space where awareness leads and love follows. So when we speak about letting go of control, we are not talking about becoming passive. We are not talking about tolerating what hurts. And we are not talking about abandoning your needs. We are talking about something much softer and much braver. We are talking about learning how to rest your nervous system inside the relationship. How to soften your grip without abandoning your self-respect. How to stay connected to yourself even when outcomes are uncertain. Like a sister to sister sitting beside you, I want to remind you gently. You are allowed to grow without forcing, to trust without disappearing, to loosen without losing yourself. So ladies, here are 6 gentle ways to begin letting go of control in marriage. Not by becoming smaller but by becoming more rooted inside yourself. 1. When your body tightens, don't react, regulate first. Keep this in mind. Before control becomes a thought, it shows up as a sensation. Your body notices long before your mind finds the words. Can be that quiet clench in your jaw when something doesn't go the way you expected. That small squeeze in your chest when reassurance doesn't come right away. The way your breath catches when you feel misunderstood. The restless movement in your hands when the future feels uncertain. Does that feel familiar? Listen, this isn't you being too much. This is your nervous system doing its job. It is trying to keep you safe. Your body is saying something feels unstable. I need to steady it. Let me put this into a real moment. You're sitting at the kitchen table. Bills are paid, kids are handled, the day is moving along. You ask your husband a simple question. Nothing heavy. He answers, but his tone is flat, short, distracted. He's not angry. He's not being mean. He's just not fully there. But your body feels it before your mind does. Your chest tightens. Your stomach drops a little. Something in you shifted. Now your thoughts start running. Did I say something wrong? Is something bothering him? Is he pulling away? Should I say something now before this turns into something bigger? And that urge kicks in, to talk it through, to clear the air, to explain yourself, to fix the energy in the room so it doesn't turn into distance later. When your body is in that state, words come out fast. The tone carries tension even when your intention is love. And suddenly the conversation shifts, from connection to defense without either of you meaning it to. That's often how control begins. Not as a personality trait. Not because you're difficult. But as a nervous system reflex. A quiet, protective voice inside you saying, I'm trying to prevent distance. I'm trying to keep us close. I'm trying to make sure we're okay. So instead of correcting yourself, soften yourself. Here's how. Before you speak, pause your body. Feel your feet on the floor. Let them remind you that you're supported. Take one slow breath in through your nose, long and gentle. Not to force calm. Just to let your system know. I'm here. I'm safe. Then, instead of spinning a story in your mind, simply notice what's happening in your body. My chest feels tight. My body is alert right now. No judging. No analyzing. Just awareness. That small pause changes everything. It turns reaction into choice. It turns tension into presence. It creates emotional safety without a single dramatic word. And you can practice this gently, in ordinary moments. Anytime you feel the impulse to immediately fix, correct, explain, or defend, give yourself 10 seconds. Not to suppress what you feel. Just to let your body know it doesn't have to brace before you speak. You're not trying to control the situation. You're learning to soothe the part of you that learned to stay alert in order to survive. And that, my friends, is not weakness. That's wisdom catching up with experience. 2. Stop taking responsibility for how he feels. Ladies, I need you to hear me on this one. You don't have to carry how he feels. Really, you don't. I know how easy it is to slip into thinking you're responsible for everything. His mood, the connection, whether the conversation goes well, whether the house feels calm. Most of the time you're not consciously choosing this. You just feel it, like a weight in your chest, like if you don't manage it, everything might fall apart. And here's what I really want you to hear. This doesn't come from control or ego. It comes from care. It's really common to unconsciously try to stabilize the emotional field around you. You don't decide to do it, it just happens. If he is stressed, you soften yourself. If he's quiet, you become hyper-attentive. If he's upset, you try to fix it quickly before it settles. That's love trying to keep the peace. But over time, this pattern teaches your body something quietly and deeply. His emotions are my responsibility. And that belief, my dear, is exhausting. Keeps your nervous system on constant alert. There's no room to rest when you're always scanning, adjusting, holding everything together. This is where the distinction matters. Being responsible is healthy. Sounds like I care. I show up. I'm present. I do my part. And ladies, that's adulthood. That is love. That's partnership. But owning everything is something else entirely. That's when a conversation goes a little left, the mood feels off, and your mind quietly says, "Hey, what did I do? How do I fix this? What do I need to adjust so this doesn't turn into a problem?" Now you're not connecting, you're managing. And again, that's not love, that's depletion. And it doesn't belong to you. Here's the shift, and it matters. You can care without caring. You can stay engaged without chasing. You can be connected without over-adjusting yourself to keep the peace. Don't absorb what isn't yours to hold. Let his feelings stay with him. This doesn't mean you care less. It means you're finally caring for yourself at the same time. You're teaching your nervous system that connection doesn't require self-abandonment. And you're teaching him that closeness doesn't require control. And I promise you this, letting go of that weight doesn't push him away. It actually creates room for real connection. The kind that doesn't make your heart race with stress but slows it down with calm. You were never meant to hold everything on your own. And you deserve that calm. 3. Stop over-functioning emotionally. Here's something I need you to understand, and I mean this gently. Noticing everyone else before yourself isn't weakness. A lot of women, especially those who grew up reading moods and energy, learned early on to scan the room before turning inward. You notice his tone before you notice your own tension. You track his mood before you check in with your needs. You anticipate reactions before your own feelings even get a chance to breathe. That wasn't a flaw. That was adaptation. That was survival. But over time, that habit quietly pulls you away from your own inner world. And that's when it starts to feel heavy. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing too much alone. Here's the shift, and it's important. This isn't about caring less about him. That would feel unnatural and cold. It's about caring about yourself at the same time. Instead of asking first, what is he feeling? Try softly asking, what is happening in me right now? Instead of constantly monitoring the room, start inhabiting your own body. Notice. Are you tired? Overstimulated? Craving quiet, affection, reassurance, or space? This is where something subtle but powerful happens. As self-attunement increases, control naturally loosens. Not because you're forcing yourself to let go, but because when you're rooted inside yourself, you don't need to manage everything outside of you. You become less reactive, not because you care less, but because you're more regulated. It's like finally coming home to yourself and realizing there's a soft chair there that's been waiting for you all along. Stop pre-living conversations in your head. Practice grounded, present communication. Ladies, let me tell you something I think you'll recognize. One of the sneakiest ways control shows up is inside your own head. You know exactly what I mean. the mental rehearsals. Imagining what he might say, planning your response, adjusting your tone, trying to script the outcome before a single word has even been spoken. It's exhausting, and honestly, it makes you feel like you've already had the whole conversation by yourself. And suddenly, you're carrying the emotional weight before the conversation has even begun. That's not intuition. That's anxiety trying to stay ahead of pain. Here's a simple habit that helps more than you'd expect. Before any emotional conversation, ask yourself, am I responding to what's actually happening, or to what I'm afraid might happen? That question alone can pull you out of the spiral. And when you stop pre-living the conversation and come back to now, something shifts. Your body softens. Your words feel lighter. And the conversation becomes what it was meant to be in the first place. Not a performance, not a strategy, but a real connection. You don't need to carry it all in your head first. You get to arrive as you are. 5. Set inner boundaries before outer ones. When people talk about boundaries in marriage, they usually jump straight to outer boundaries. What you'll tolerate, what you'll say no to, what you need from him. And yes, those matter. But if you don't set inner boundaries first, the outer ones either come out messy, or they don't hold at all. Inner boundaries are about what you take responsibility for, and what you don't, inside your own body and mind. It's deciding quietly and firmly, I am responsible for my feelings, my regulation, my meaning-making, but I am not responsible for managing his emotions, his reactions, or his inner process. Without that clarity, marriage starts to feel like emotional overwork. You end up explaining too much, fixing too fast, absorbing moods that aren't yours, or speaking before you're actually grounded. Not because you lack boundaries, but because you're trying to place them from a dysregulated place. Setting an inner boundary sounds like this. I don't need to resolve this feeling before I'm allowed to rest. I can feel disappointed without turning it into a problem to solve. I can pause before responding even if he's uncomfortable with the pause. That pause? That's an inner boundary. When you set inner boundaries first, your nervous system isn't scrambling to protect you through control or over-explaining. You're steady. And from that steadiness, outer boundaries land clean. Instead of, you always do this and it makes me feel ignored. It becomes, I'm noticing I need some space before we talk about this. Same situation. Totally different energy. Inner boundaries also protect you from self-abandonment. They stop you from crossing yourself to keep the peace. You don't need to prove your point, justify your feelings, or earn your right to be upset. You decide internally, my experience is valid even before it's understood. That's huge. And here's the part most people miss. When you hold inner boundaries, you actually give the relationship more room to breathe. You're not gripping it. You're not managing every emotional shift. You're allowing both of you to be separate, regulated adults who choose each other, rather than two nervous systems tangled up trying to stay safe. Outer boundaries without inner ones feel sharp, defensive, or reactive. Inner boundaries without outer ones feel calm, grounded, and natural. So before you say no, check in. Before you explain, regulate. Before you confront, come home to yourself. Marriage doesn't need more control. It needs more self-trust. And that starts on the inside. 6. Anchor your identity in yourself, not in the relationship's stability. This one is big, so let me say it slowly, the way I would if we were sitting together. Anchoring your identity in yourself, not in the relationship's stability, changes everything. When your sense of who you are is tied to how the relationship is doing, every shift feels personal. A quiet moment feels like rejection. Tension feels like failure. Distance feels like danger. And without realizing it, you start working overtime to bring things back to okay, just so you can feel okay inside. That's not because you're needy. It's because your identity has gotten fused with the state of the connection. Here's the thing I want you to really understand. Relationships move. They have seasons, highs, lows, pauses, misunderstandings. If your self-worth rises and falls with those waves, your nervous system never gets to rest. Anchoring your identity in yourself means this. I am still me even when the relationship feels wobbly. I am still grounded even when things are unclear. I don't disappear when connection shifts. It's knowing, deep in your body, that you are solid on your own. That your values, your sense of self, your worth don't evaporate the moment there's tension or silence. When you're anchored in yourself, you don't chase stability in the relationship to feel safe. You bring stability into the relationship because you already have it internally. And that changes how you show up. You don't overfunction to keep the peace. You don't panic at discomfort. You don't read every emotional shift as a referendum on your value. You stay curious instead of defensive. You respond instead of react. You let things breathe. This doesn't make you detached. It makes you secure. A secure partner isn't someone who never cares deeply. It's someone who can care deeply without losing themselves in the process. So when things feel good, you enjoy them. When things feel off, you don't collapse or scramble. You stay rooted. And from that place, the relationship has room to be real. Not constantly propped up, not held together by effort or fear, but supported by two whole people who know who they are. You are allowed to be a full person first, and a partner second. That's not selfish. That's healthy. And honestly, that's where real intimacy starts. So ladies, always remember this. Letting go of control isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about becoming anchored. Anchored in your body. Anchored in your self-worth. Anchored in your ability to regulate yourself even when things feel uncertain. When you stop needing to manage every outcome, when you loosen the grip just a little, you create real space. Space for trust. Space for respect. Space for honest connection. And yes, space for peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on everything going right, but the steady kind that stays with you even when it doesn't. It's like you stop tensing your hands. You stop holding your breath. You stop trying to steer every moment. Instead, you stand rooted. Your presence becomes calm instead of tight. Warm instead of anxious, open instead of guarded. And it doesn't depend on perfection. It doesn't depend on him saying or doing exactly what you hoped. You are centered. You are here. You are you. And quietly, without force, that changes everything. Changes the tone of your home, the rhythm of your conversations, the way your body feels at the end of the day. You're not broken. You're learning to rest. You're not failing. You're learning to trust yourself. You're learning that you can soften without shrinking, be present without losing yourself, and stay grounded even when moods shift. Your worth is not on trial every time things feel off. And that right there, that's the beginning of a deeply conscious marriage. One where love isn't built on control but on presence. One where connection grows not because you push harder, but because you show up steady, rooted, and fully human. I'm really glad you took this time. Glad you were willing to look inward, to meet yourself with honesty, and to choose growth with kindness instead of force. So until next time, pause, breathe, and remember, the steadiness you're looking for isn't something you have to create out there. Something you're already learning to carry inside.